Hi, this is David from MADTechUK, sorting the good from the mad. Today I've just received the 12-inch Space Grey MacBook. This is the new 12-inch that's just been released. It's got a 1.2 GHz dual-core Intel M5 processor that turbo boosts up to 2.7 GHz when running. It's got a 512GB SSD, 8GB of RAM, and it's got the Intel HD Graphics 515. I'm going to do an unboxing of this model and compare it against some of the other MacBook models, such as the MacBook Air. Now normally I use a 15-inch MacBook Pro. I'm curious as to how much power this particular model packs, because my MacBook Pro is currently about 4 years old. It's 15-inch, quad-core i7. I do expect that to be the faster of the two. I like the fact that the 12-inch is very portable. One of the problems I have maybe with the 12-inch is that there's only going to be one port you can use. It has this single USB-C port. You're going to have to use a lot of adapters on it in order to get the most out of it. So here's the unit, all nicely boxed as you'd expect with Apple. One thing I've noticed on the back here as well, so I gave you the specs initially, but you do get a glossy widescreen display. You've got 2304 by 1440 pixels, so you're looking at a very high resolution Retina display on the 12-inch. So the plastic's off. Let's get the lid off here. Put that to the side, just there. So there's the unit. I'm really liking the Space Grey. I must admit, I really think it'd be good if they did the colour options across the entire MacBook range now. I like the Space Grey. There is a new rose gold option. Quite a few people have gone for that. Not a fan of that colour myself. Much prefer the Space Grey. So there's the unit. That is tiny. That is really not much bigger than an iPad. One of the problems a lot of users may find, however, is the singular USB-C port. In order to output this to another monitor, you need an adapter to go in here. Whilst all MacBooks have that same facility, this same port is used to charge the device. So the problem is that you have to buy an adapter that may well have a pass-through in order to charge the device. The adapter that does that costs an additional £65. I think that's very, very expensive. Most of the MacBook display adapters are around £15. Even if they'd included maybe just a HDMI output, that would have been really useful. At least then you could actually output to an external display and charge the unit as well. There's the USB-C cable. Let's pop that out. So we need that in order to charge the unit. There's the charger. And in here, I expect to find a couple of Apple stickers. Fantastic. Space Grey Apple stickers, no less. The usual little instruction guide there. Let's move all that off to the side. Put that over there. I'm going to plug it in, fire the unit up. Just before I plug it in, I've taken the plastic casing off there. The unit is very, very striking. The Space Grey, I think, is a really lovely colour for the laptop. If you get it scratched, it's going to show up ever more so, but it is a really lovely unit. My iPhone, for example, I've also have a Space Grey colour on the iPhone. I just think it's a really nice colour. It's nicer than just the pure aluminium look. So let's get this plugged in and we'll see it running. So you've got your trackpad just here. The keyboard runs right up to the edge. It actually creates quite an impressive look. If I tilt that up just slightly so you can see, it does create quite an impressive look, and you've got the grill just at the top there for audio to come out. In terms of the screen size, the 12-inch, that is a lovely portable screen size. As I say, that's not much bigger than an iPad. Now, I'm not too sure about the keyboard. The fact that the model is so thin means the keyboard has been designed to be equally thin. And what I'm noticing here is there is not much feedback from the keys that they have been pressed. You can feel that they've been pressed, but they're so thin as to remove a lot of the feedback. That could actually become quite tedious if you were typing on this for long periods of time. Here we are with the MacBook set up and running. I'm downloading some more applications in order to see how the processing power can handle them. I've got a game currently downloading. There's about 11 gigabytes of that to come through, so I'm going to give that a try a little bit later. But I'm basically going to step through a few different options here and see how the system performs. As I say, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabyte SSD. I'd expect it to be fairly responsive. The only downside here is obviously the 1.2 gigahertz Intel M processor. Screen resolution wise, I think you can get a little bit more space, so we'll dive into the settings here. If I go to displays, if we go to scaled, I am currently running the equivalent of a 1280 by 800 pixel display. If I go for more space, which I'd like to do, that's the equivalent of a 1440 by 900 display. That just gives me a little bit more. I would definitely leave it on that option. If I go up to about this Mac, we can see what we've got in here. So there's the spec, as I would expect. Interestingly enough, the HD graphics are using 1.5 gigabytes of shared memory here. So effectively you're limited to 6.5 gigabytes for the rest of the operating system. First problem that I've encountered, and I knew this would happen, I want to get some information onto the system. I do have network drives on my setup here, which I would be able to access over the Wi-Fi, but I've got some specific files on USB which I wanted to add to the system that I could maybe show how iMovie can handle some movie editing, for example. First problem, I've got no USB adapter. I've got a USB-C port here. I don't have the dongle to be able to connect a USB flash drive, for example, or USB hard drive, so I'm limited straight away. Very annoying. So really simple, quick bit of video, my movie. I'm going to export that as a file. I'll keep it at 1080p. This is my example video. I'm going to go for best quality, so I've got it at 1080p. I could export as 4K. Save that to my documents. And I want to see roughly how long this takes. So the process timer has started up here. This is only 10 seconds of video footage, and that feels like it's taking a really long time to process and get the output. So far, two small chunks of the pie chart have appeared. If I were doing this on my MacBook Pro, that would definitely have been done by now, which really shows the difference. Obviously my MacBook Pro is a quad-core i7, 2.3 gigahertz. It's packing 16 gigabytes of RAM. There is a vast difference, really. Actually seeing how slowly this is doing the processing makes me feel like I really couldn't use this for video editing, especially not for such a small segment of data, 10 seconds worth of video. That's taking an absolute age to process. And then suddenly it jumps to completion. Okay, let's show the file. Even though it jumped to completion, that still feels like it took a very long time. Open the file. A bit of video of the laptop itself. We'll get about 10 seconds. I'll record a bit of video of the laptop itself. We'll get about 10 seconds. In all fairness, the playback is super smooth. That's running at full HD. The file size there, we were at 27 megabytes. That really doesn't feel like a very difficult video for it to have exported, and yet the time there, I will flash the time up on screen and calculate it. That felt like a very long time. Now I want to get a brief idea of how movies look when being played back, so I've logged into my iTunes account. I've got one of my purchases just briefly streaming, Man from Uncle. Let's try and find a slightly lighter scene in there. Now I must admit, the audio coming out of the sort of very tiny bar speaker here is very loud. That's actually very good. The system's so small though that you can really feel the vibration if you run your fingers over the top.
Well, I can get you over the wall.
So movies look really good, as I'd expect. It's a little bit dim on the display there. Let's see if I can brighten that up a little bit. It's as bright as it goes. Let's try a lighter scene there so it's a bit easier to see. Yeah, it plays back absolutely perfectly. It looks really good. So I'm just loading up Batman Arkham City to see how well this plays. It took a little while to install. Whilst it's not the newest game available, it'd be interesting to see how well it plays. Straight away the frame rate seems quite low. Let's turn the volume down there. Frame rate definitely seems very low. It's a very stuttery image. I wouldn't be able to play this for too long. Yeah, so we're not too cut out for gaming just there. I'm not too surprised really, to be fair. I am being mean. This machine wasn't really built for being a high-powered gaming machine. It wasn't built for being a high-powered video editing machine. These are things I wanted to test though and compare against the existing systems that I use. I'm definitely torn with the fact that the design itself is lovely. It is super light. There's a lot of things that you could do as an average user. You could certainly do all of your basic office tasks, web browsing. I think if you didn't like to just have a tablet and wanted access to full Mac OS X, then this is a great choice. But the price tag is amazingly high considering the limited connectivity options. That for me is a real downer for this unit. And maybe if USB-C becomes more of a standard elsewhere and devices start to offer pass-through options for power, for example, that would be really useful. But until then, to me that really limits what I can do with this system. Now, one of my curiosities here was the fact that this particular unit costs £1,299. And already I find limitations. I find limitations in the processing power. I find major limitations in the connectivity options. There's a headphone, stereo, microphones there, and this USB-C port that you've got to buy extra adapters for. Personally, I'm not too enamoured with that. I find that very annoying. So it occurred to me, what would be your alternative MacBook if you are looking at this sort of size and portability? Well, the first option, of course, is the MacBook Air. I've got a few comparison shots against a MacBook Air 13-inch, and it's interesting to note that the 12-inch MacBook here, even at its thickest point, is about as thick as the thinnest point of the 13-inch MacBook Air. So, okay, thumbs up for portability. However, that £1,300 that you're paying for this, I think you are losing out on the processing capabilities and connectivity options. So I went to the Apple website and I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to see what you could get for similar money in a MacBook Air variant? Now obviously there is the 11-inch MacBook Air. Straight away I'm thinking, well, why have we got so many variations of MacBook? We've got an 11-inch MacBook Air, we've got this 12-inch, we've got the 13-inch MacBook Air, we've obviously got the larger 15-inch MacBook Pros. This seems slightly pointless. I can get the 11-inch MacBook Air with a 1.6 GHz dual-core Intel i5 processor, which I would be quite happy with compared to the Intel Core M5, configured with 8 GB of RAM, 512 GB of storage, and that only comes out at £1,219. It's nearly £100 less than this model. And what do I get for nearly £100 less than this? Well, I actually get a slightly smaller screen size, so very portable. I get the ability to use my existing display adapters using the DisplayPort. I get USB 3, Thunderbolt 2, and an SD card slot. So, all in all, I'm not too enamoured with this design. The only thing I feel it's got going for it is this lovely space grey colour. In summary, you would be mad to buy it. I am an Apple fan, but what they have done here is to create yet another size option in their lineup of MacBooks, similar to what they've done with the iPad models, and I equate the iPad models to the Russian doll lineup of iPads. We now have the Russian doll lineup of MacBook laptops, ranging through from 11 to 12 to 13 to 15 inch. I don't think that going from the 11 to the 12 to the 13 really offers you much difference. If you want super portable, get the 11 inch MacBook Air or go larger. I've been David for MADTechUK. Thanks for watching.